just going to read Kat's bio. I'm sure some of you have already met her, but Kat Duran is a self-taught designer who started her career in credit union marketing and found her way into Salesforce product design during the pandemic. She's currently a product design and marketing manager at Terranox. If I said that wrong, she can correct me. A Salesforce consultancy based in Los Angeles, focusing on product development strategy, and she oversees the design process. She's also co-founded UX High, which is a community for UX designers in Hawaii, and it's a Friends of Figma Hawaii community advocate, and it's so awesome. I'm so grateful for this community that she brought together. I'm going to go ahead and put in the LinkedIn for everyone in the chat, and that's it for me. I will pass it on over to Kat and give you permission right now to screen share.
Okay, can you see my screen? Great. So thanks again for inviting me, and I feel like I've met almost everyone here already. But as just mentioned in my intro, I currently do product design, focusing on the Salesforce tech stack at a Salesforce consultancy in LA. So I used to work in credit union marketing, and earlier this year, I found my way into the Salesforce space through the Purple Maya Foundation's free Salesforce training program. I continued on into their apprenticeship program, and that's kind of where I first learned about Agile and Scrum. So just a quick question, is anyone here already familiar with Dual-Track Agile, or maybe like Agile and Scrum in general?
No.
Yes.
A little bit with Agile, but not dual track.
Okay, so let me start there with Agile, just basic Agile and Scrum. So when I used to work in marketing, my team used the waterfall model of managing the build of our new website. And that wasn't really what we specifically called it, but the waterfall model is a sequential development process that flows through the different project phases. So you don't start the next phase until the previous one is done. And even when I built WordPress websites on the side, my process was pretty linear. You know, it flowed from discovery and research, development, and maintenance. And while this waterfall model works for smaller projects where timelines and requirements are easily defined, for much larger projects with more ambiguity and constraints, that probably works best with an Agile approach. So Agile refers to the different methodologies and frameworks that focus on iterative development and testing that allows product teams to deliver value faster, yet still be able to respond to change quickly. So Scrum is a type of Agile framework, and it involves a product owner, a Scrum master, the dev team, and then the product owner creates this product backlog, which is like a to-do list for the Scrum team. And then the Scrum team figures out and prioritizes like what they can do within a specific period on their sprint backlog. And development in Scrum is time-boxed and is done in incremental delivery called sprints. So sprint lengths, they can be 1, 2, maybe 3-week sprints, and that's determined by the team. So unlike the waterfall model, where all business and tech requirements excuse me, are defined and documented up front, Scrum uses user stories that live on the backlog and on a project management tool like Jira, for example. And these user stories make it easy for the team to make adjustments on the fly to meet changing needs and priorities. So for example, after a sprint, the product owner and the Scrum team would review the work that was done to make sure that they're on the right track. Maybe they might change some stuff on the backlog and then move on again to continue building the next sprint. So outside of learning Salesforce, I did some self-studying on UX, or user experience design. So when I started working in Scrum, I kind of struggled to understand like where UX fits in the sprint, because traditional Agile and Scrum is taught through more of a tech and engineering lens, right? So things like doing user research, one-on-one interviews, creating prototypes in Figma, scheduling the usability testings for those prototypes, like these types of tasks don't usually get completed during 1-week sprints. And discovery and design work, they can be hard to be time boxed and with very tight deadlines and turnaround times. Sometimes it gets skipped in the sprints and then we just go straight into the build. And that's not always a good thing, right? Because deliveries can get late, projects might take forever, there's wasted time on development rework, and then you get stressed out teams, working over the weekend. And then from a designer standpoint, development want to start on a new feature like tomorrow, and then I don't get enough lead time to do the work. So times like these, I feel like I just throw designs over to the dev team, and that's like a guarantee that compromises and rework will happen to just meet the deadlines, right? So how can we improve this? Well, for one, we can take time to do product discovery. So product discovery is where UX starts. It's where we do all of the research to make sure that we're building the right thing and that we're delivering what customer needs instead of what we think they might want. And then there are different approaches to doing the product discovery, but one way is something called the double diamond, pictured here. So it's an iterative process where you identify what the challenge is, and then you frame the problem through ideation, prototyping, and testing to find solutions. So what you get out of doing this process is validated learning, complete with requirements, specs, mockups, prototypes, which in turn create a better backlog that ensures that the dev team is building the right things and that they're building it right. Okay, so how does all of this product discovery stuff fit into the Scrum process? So now this is where Dual-Track Agile comes in. So it's essentially one team, but split into two tracks. And some people have roles that would span both so that there's transparency between these tracks and we're not, falling back to working in waterfalls and silos. So the discovery track is where all of the product discovery and UX stuff happens, which was what I previously talked about. And then discovery work has to be completed before any of the sprint work can begin. And ideally, we want to be at least a sprint ahead of the dev team or the delivery team so that they can work without delay. And of course, there'll be things that don't really need deep discovery work, so that can just go straight into the delivery backlog. And then the delivery track, that's kind of the typical agile development part. So at this point, our validated solutions from discovery are prioritized and added to the delivery backlog. So any feedback from testing in sandbox or from the live production site would be considered an enhancement and then put into the discovery backlog as ideas that need to be refined for future sprints. So what all of this looks like is just having two separate backlogs, right? So the discovery backlog isn't usually like a time box thing like in Scrum. So it's a simple Kanban board that indicates all of the UX tasks that are currently in progress. And then once it hits done, or I guess is validated and ready for development, then it'll move into the delivery backlog to run through the typical Scrum and sprint process. And then at least this time around, it's things that have been validated and tested, not based on assumptions, which hopefully reduces like the development waste and teams can deliver working products more frequently. So I guess I should have prefaced this talk with a disclaimer that I'm not yet a Dual-Track Agile expert. My team and I are still relatively new to just Scrum in general. And while we've known about Dual-Track for a few weeks only now, we did just start to implement it today, actually. So if you have any questions, I might not have the answers to them yet, maybe ask me in a few months, but I can point you to some resources that might be helpful if you're interested in learning more about how to implement it within your own teams or just learning more about it in general. So I'll be sharing these slides with Jess later if you guys want to check these out. So product board has a great overview of Dual-Track Agile. I've got an article in here about the double diamond process for product discovery, and then a few links on how to incorporate UX into your backlogs from Nielsen Norman Group, which is one of the OGs in the UX research space. So So yeah, I mean, thanks again for giving me the space to share. And I hope I've piqued your interest in Dual-Track Agile and how UX fits into the process.